I'm not a big fan of government involvement in most things. Maybe I'm libertarian. I don't know what I am, but that's just where I stand. However, I'm all for the government getting involved in some regard in terms of amount of eligibility and how long a player can be at a particular school or in college. Because I don't think it's far fetched to say that an NFL player might not make a team and come back to college one day. I don't think that's absolutely off the table. I want it off the table. Don't get me wrong. So, your thoughts, the Department of Justice shared some thoughts on the Sakai Ziegler situation, which I never thought I would say that. But the report pointed out that if schools don't limit years of participation, they could use more experienced players gaining an advantage and discouraging other teams from fielding younger players. It also said that a lack of eligibility rules could lead to a blurred line between college and professional sports, potentially reducing consumer demand. I think this is a real issue, Caleb, that the NCAA or somebody, whoever runs the athletics side of that now, that you've got to do something, Caleb. You've got to take control of this or it's going to go off the rails.
I think in this case, they just need to rule in favor of the NCAA. I actually don't think there's much of a fight that has to happen because, I mean, I am a big antitrust guy, but in my argument, I don't think there's anything that the NCAA is vying antitrust laws on this. So,
But do you think, would you like for the NCAA, I'm sorry, the federal government to come to the NCAA and say, I don't know if this would be considered an antitrust law or not, but say essentially you have 5 years to play five. That's what you have, and you can't go beyond that, and that's law. So you can't violate that. Because
no,
right now it's not law, it's a rule.
well, yeah, I mean, no, here's my thing. No, I think the NCAA should be allowed to just have the rules, and then players want to sue, they can sue. But what I would say is the NCAA should stop caving, and the court should rule on the side of the players. The NCAA should. I think the NCAA eligibility rules are mostly fine. I've never really had a problem with them. I don't think I need the federal government to step in for that because the NCAA rule, they just need to let the NCAA keep this rule in place. This is an NCAA rule that doesn't violate antitrust laws. So, I mean, I don't really have a problem with it. So, I think that's all that really has to happen. I do think my problem is people are asking the government to get involved, and they're asking them to get involved in ways that is ridiculous because they want the government to curb the NIL spending on players, which is absolutely illegal. But yeah, no, I don't think you need. I think the NCAA having a rule is fine. If players want to challenge it, they can challenge it. The government just needs to side with them, or the Supreme Court needs to side with the player with the NCAA on this because they're not violating any rules. It typically takes you 4 years to graduate college. For many kids, it takes 5 now. Set your eligibility at that. Call it a day.
5 for 5. I agree. I don't understand the red shirt, why it's still applicable. I think that clearly limits a player's ability to make NIL money if he's not on the field. Mark says, yes, there should be some structure. I agree, but the courts have said no. They
haven't said no to structure. They've said no to the NCAA telling players they couldn't get paid, and they should have said no to that. Because the NCAA was literally stealing money from players.
If it turns into AAA, Caleb, I think you've got a problem.
Honestly though, we're a college football show. College football's already gone down the path of turning into AAA. That happened the minute everybody decided to have an expanded playoff and have the SEC and Big Ten take over everything and not have conferences and not have it inherently regional. That is way down the road. You're the one who wants the super conference, Dave. You want the effective minor league NFL.
Well, I still don't think there's a difference between a super conference with players that are 18 to 22 and have limited eligibility and a bunch of dudes who are in their early 30s and can't make an NFL team. That's what scares me.
No, I get what you're saying, but I don't think there's no violation. The courts will side with the NCAA on this, and they should. Zakai shouldn't win his case. I'm sorry, he shouldn't. That's the way I would land on this.
Well, Dylan says this, and Dylan, I agree with you philosophically. When you get the government involved, you can expect a crapshoot that is going to get dragged out for years. You're probably right. If there's any Supreme Court justices or whoever that want to weigh in on this, it probably would take 5 years for it to go into effect. And could the government mess it up? Absolutely, they could.
Yeah, but again, I don't think this is. It's not. You can't mess this up. It's straightforward. The NCAA has an eligibility ruling. Does it or does it not violate antitrust? It does not violate antitrust. It clear as day doesn't violate antitrust. You realize how many places, Dave, in this country you can. I mean, temp jobs exist all over the country, right? Where you
What?
say, "Hey, temp jobs, temporary
Yeah,
jobs," like
okay, yeah.
yeah, temp jobs. If you're going to say eligible, if you're going to say it's antitrust because it's limiting your NIL potential, then you're going to say temp jobs everywhere are antitrust violations. Well, that's just a stupid idea. The NCAA is going to side. I mean, the courts will side with the NCAA on this.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm concerned, and I'm concerned that Ziegler's case could, and the Vanderbilt kid, if you want to remind everybody about that, I feel like sliding downhill quickly here.
The Vanderbilt one was about junior college, and the NCAA caved. I think the NCAA absolutely would have won that case with junior college too. So I think that was a mistake by the NCAA. So they shouldn't have caved
What
on
makes you
this.
think they won't cave again and again and again?
I mean, that's the mistake. I don't think they should. I don't think they will, but I don't think it's a big deal. Like, if they don't cave, I think they'll win this in court.
The show represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, broadcasting live from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. Now, I don't see any way that the government can get involved with NIL money.
No, but that's what they're trying to do with the House settlement. And it's going to get, and they're asking Tennessee has a state law that would violate the rules of what the House settlement is going to be because, Dave, I don't know if you know this, there were rumors that Tennessee violated that basically there's rumors that Tennessee could get kicked out of the SEC because they're not going to violate the agreements all the conference want. They're not going to go along with the agreements all the conferences want the schools to go along with.
Okay,
So,
Adam says he brings up a great point that kind of refutes my stance. You can't age discriminate on temp jobs.
yeah, you can't age discriminate in the NCAA. They could a 40-year-old could play football if he's good enough. If he has those, I mean, Chris Winkie was 27 and won a national title.
That was bizarre.
But it's not like it's about eligibility. It has nothing to do with age. Okay, the NFL age discriminates by saying you have to be out of high school for 3 years before you play. But that's it.
Well, and you have the one and done rule, which I've always felt like
The NBA, yeah.
NBA.
Yeah, see, you can age discriminate there, but like, yeah, college football doesn't age discriminate, guys. That's a big misnomer. They don't. I mean, you can play in your 30s if you want.
Boy, you think I could go out there and run around? Nathaniel says, I agree. House settlement gets blown up immediately and collective bargaining or a term limit law would need to go in. What's your take on that?
It's true. House settlement would blow up immediately. And by the way, there's no collective bargaining. Every time someone brings up collective bargaining, you're talking about what a school would pay a player. There is nothing you can do to stop a player making whatever the hell he wants in endorsement deals, which is what NIL is. So,
but it's not going to be that for long. The money's going to go through the schools for long.
No, says who? If Pilot wants to, if Pilot is a booster for Tennessee and wants to give a player a bunch of money to be an endorser, and as long as they go to Tennessee, doesn't have to go through the school. Can go directly from Pilot to the player.
Let me ask you this. What's your biggest concern where we are, or do you have any concerns? Is it eligibility? Is it age? Is it NIL money gone wild? Or are you good?
I'm good. I don't think there's any real concerns on this. Everybody's freaking out about it, and I'm like, let it take its course. The courts will rule in favor of the NCAA, provided the NCAA doesn't cave. The NCAA can't afford to cave on this one because then they're screwed. So, yeah, that's pretty much how that works. So they're fine.
Trust the NCAA not to cave?
Yes, because they would be totally irrelevant. This is one that their entire existence depends on this. It's the holding up.
Well, I don't know, but what do they really do now? Is anybody in the NCAA stronger than Greg Sankey or Tony Batiti?
No, but Tony Batiti and Greg Sankey still need the NCAA to sponsor lesser sports tournaments. So that's where they land on that. They don't want to do that. They don't want to sponsor it. for basketball or baseball. So trust me, the NCAA is going to be in okay shape. Conference realignment, I hate more things about the structure of college football than I do about the NCAA's power or what the players are getting paid. I'm not worried about that. I don't mind. I used to. I'm fine with opening up the free market. I have never had. I don't think it's ruined college football the way people think. I really don't. So I mean, that's
I don't know. I get an awful lot of feedback to the opposite of that.
everybody complains, and then here's what happens. Everybody complains, and then Saturday in September comes, and what are they doing? They're all glued to their TV watching, just like they always were.
Yeah. Well, I covered NASCAR for a long time, Caleb. And do you know why NASCAR fell apart?
They did the opposite. They took the power away from the drivers.
Well, they did a couple of different things. One, they got in weird markets. They pulled from traditional tracks. Again, tradition is the theme. And the other thing that they did is they got greedy and they said, instead of you building your own car, you have to buy all the parts from us and we're going to mark it up 35%. That was the car of tomorrow was the car of stupid.
But that's the reverse of what's happening in college football right now. No one's saying that you're talking about NASCAR became like the NCAA used to be. Okay, that where players became almost uniform. There's more individualism now in college football, and so I don't see that parallel at all with NASCAR. And the only parallel I see,
breaking from tradition. That's my only parallel.
okay, here's what's breaking from tradition: a playoff, and that's how NASCAR also got destroyed, was a playoff. And I told you guys from the start. Remember, Dave, me and you debated this heavily. I said a playoff would destroy what matters with college football. And it already has. No one cares about the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry anymore. No one's going to care about the Iron Bowl anymore. Who cares if they're both going to the playoff? You have turned it into Duke UNC basketball.
Mark says the product has not suffered. The games are great. Now, Derek says this, and we can do some research on this, said, Caleb, no one's glued to TV ratings have hit historic lows.
Not during the regular season last year, but the playoff ratings were really, really, really bad. Not what they expected. And long term, the playoff will kill the regular season TV ratings because the playoff, again, who cares when one plays two if they're both going to the playoff? No one cares. I don't care. And it was a complete, this is the problem with it. It was so utterly short-sighted. They sacrificed what's great about 3 months for what's great about 3 weeks. And so my issues are not what player pay. People complain about player pay. Here's the truth, Dave, when you talk about ratings and things like this. And this is what executives have to be good at. And this is what Greg Sankey's not good at, by the way. Fans don't know what they want. What they say they want most of the time with the sport, if it were implemented, it would make the sport worse, and then they would complain about that. And there's a reason sometimes administrators don't listen to fans. I mean, it is, just to go back, for instance, Roger Goodell becomes commissioner of the NFL. And everybody's like, clean up the NFL. We need you to clean up these criminals in the NFL. And they wanted the NFL to be the policemen of the personal conduct of the NFL rather than the actual police and laws of their states. And guess what? You have led to more scandal, more inconsistencies, more wild issues like the Ray Rice situation because of that, because fans never think about the long-term implications. Look at fans now. They're complaining about the automatic qualifier format for the college football playoff. Well, what did you think was going to happen when you fought for an expansion? Of course, the SEC and the Big Ten were going to try to take over that.